Welcome, everyone. My name is Victoria Phillips, and I'm an industry marketing manager on the corporate science team. So today we are having our webinar, Leverage, Manage, and Share Bathymetric Content Across Your Organization. Woo! And a couple housekeeping rules is throughout this webinar, you can enter your questions in the chat, and we're going to have Q&A at the end. And also, this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the slides with you afterwards as soon as we have it ready. And if you are attending, we also will have certificates for you.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar today on next generation ArcGIS bathymetry. I'm here with Meredith Payne. My name is Steve Snow. I'm an Esri Senior National Government Strategy Specialist. I focus on maritime, actually national mapping, topographic, maritime aviation, but my main focus is hydrography. I've been with Esri for about 16 years now, and before that, I was doing aerial photogrammetric surveys as well as hydrographic surveys. Before that, I was with the U.S. Army doing topo engineering. I'd like to now introduce Meredith Payne. Meredith, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you and good morning. My name is Meredith Payne. I have been with Esri Maritime Development Team and Professional Services for about 3 years now. I am the product owner of ArcGIS Bathymetry, and before that, I was with NOAA's Hydrographic Survey Division. Thank you for having me this morning.
Okay, great. A few years ago, if anyone remembers and has been in the industry for a while, GIS was considered a complementary system to hydrographic work. Today, hydrography and GIS are completely interwoven. The days of collecting soundings only for charts is gone. Hydrographic and especially bathymetric data is used for many other purposes beyond the hydrographic office. Organizations are now starting to think as a geospatial, or perhaps a newer term as a hydrospatial agency, where water and bathymetry can be thought of as information and knowledge in space and time, very similar to your XYZ and time coordinates. The next generation of ArcGIS bathymetry, which we'll be talking about today, is where you can not only collect and analyze the data, but also use it to create our future by providing a maritime spatial data infrastructure to address your business challenges. GIS is continually being integrated into hydrography and everything we do. It's changing the way we think, allowing us to see things differently. GIS is changing the way we see things in our organization and also how our organization fits into the broader spatial community. This next generation bathymetry enables better ways to think and act when making decisions. GIS is evolving and providing the ability to become part of an interconnected platform. Hydrographic organizations using their servers and desktops are becoming interconnected through the cloud, and apps are being fed with hydrographic community content. This all feeds into what is called a web GIS that uses web services that power your maps and apps. Web GIS is co-evolving with everything else like big compute, web services, more open environment, and even more open policies. WebGIS is essentially bringing together all of our data and connecting it along with our technologies and our people and bringing things like bathymetric data to the entire world. Esri has been involved in the hydrographic community with bathymetry and charting for over 20 years. The ArcGIS bathymetry solution supports not only chart production, but bathymetry management in several industries, such as marine science, survey companies, coast and marine spatial planning, coastal engineering, the energy sector, as well as defense. With ArcGIS, one can also share bathymetry products using this web GIS through their desktop, their server, their apps, and in the cloud. today we will be covering bathymetry with ArcGIS, but I want to take this chance to tell you that bathymetry and hydrographic information can use many different data sets. ArcGIS provides the ability to not just cover bathymetry, but data from satellites, aircraft, drones, mobile mapping systems, indoor photogrammetry, as well as bathymetric information. Additionally, Esri has a large partner network that can assist with the hardware, skilled staff, software, and services that the hydrographic community can work with. Now we're going to take a quick poll. So do you want to load up the poll questions? Thank you, Victoria. So if everybody could, whoops, I lost my GoToMeeting. So if everybody can take a few seconds here, can you answer what is your industry? We'd like to understand who the audience is here. And can we review the results?
Yes, so we have 52% of people are in hydrography or oceanography, 28% are in environment, 5% in defense, 10% in transportation, and only 4% in public safety here with us today.
This is our second poll question for the audience. What is your primary use for bathymetric data? Please select one.
So far, there's a tie between charting and ship navigation, environmental management and monitoring, and only 4% are using it for energy assessment, 10% for ports and transportation, and then 10% say, I don't use bathymetry.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, Meredith, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just wanted to start by talking about what is ArcGIS bathymetry. ArcGIS bathymetry is an extension for ArcGIS that has tools and workflows for performing data exploration and modeling of bathymetric data and metadata in a GIS environment. Basically, you have a finalized bathymetry product that you bring into your GIS to do other things from it. Especially for the hydrographers among us, it's also important to point out, again, what ArcGIS bathymetry is not. So this is not a data acquisition software. This is not going to replace your on-water Quincy or HYPACK software. You don't do patch testing or sonar correction. You don't apply tides, SVP, et cetera with this. You don't do dot killing with this software. So that's just an important thing to point out for the hydrographers among us. So this slide also kind of emphasizes that point. So what is ArcGIS bathymetry used for? It was designed as a versatile data management and modeling tool that can adapt to many workflows. And here is an illustration of just one of those workflows. So on the far left, this is the before GIS portion. This is where you are on the water collecting data during bathymetric surveys. It's outside of ArcGIS and where you process those data with your acquisition and processing software. We have industry partners such as HYPACK that are prevalent in this domain, and they are responsible for this part of the workflow. And using specialized software, the bathymetry is then cleaned and exported either as rasters or points, typically. And we have been working with partners such as HYPACK to facilitate the exporting of data from their software suites into ours. So just in the last year or so, you can now create a Esri GeoTIFF in HYPACK and import it directly into our software. So that is an exciting development. So post-process bathymetry data can then be added and managed by ArcGIS and ArcGIS bathymetry, where it can be queried, visualized, combined, analyzed, and otherwise manipulated. Users have access to bathymetry-specific solutions and modeling where they can deconflict overlapping surfaces based on metadata and create a single seamless multi-resolution surface. And I'm going to demo a little bit of that today. What can be done with that surface? Well, because the data is now all in the ArcGIS platform, users have access to over 1,000 geoprocessing tools for analysis, such as seafloor detection, change detection, slope analysis, dredging volume analysis, and contouring. Surfaces created with the solution can also be published online, and I'll show you a little bit of that today, to be disseminated publicly or within your own agency to a wider audience, and shared within or without your organization. The data can then be reused directly in more ArcGIS bathymetry solution tools, and also can then move you along if you are doing a charting workflow and go directly into ArcGIS Maritime, where the bathymetry becomes a data source for your nautical charts. Next slide, please. So ArcGIS bathymetry at the next release of ArcGIS Pro, so 3.1, coming in the very next quarter, is really exciting because this is going to be a hybrid product. And what do I mean by that? So you have a data management and administration piece, and that is what occurs in ArcGIS Pro Desktop. But then through server technology, we basically have your bathymetry catalog published through ArcGIS Server to an ArcGIS image service. And the third part of this is that the data are then accessed and visualized through a bathymetry web application that is delivered with ArcGIS bathymetry solution. It is configurable, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this allows your organization's bathymetric data to be able to be seen and used and manipulated through a much wider audience than those who just have access to the desktop tools. Next slide. So this is a pictorial example of what I was just saying. So we envision that on the ArcGIS Pro desktop side, you will probably have one or a few super users, database administrators, hydrographic data administrators. And these are the users who are responsible for aggregating your library of bathymetric data, for putting them into your bathymetric geodatabase, which we call the Bathymetric Information System, and I will use BIS as an acronym for that throughout this talk. So the data manager puts your bathymetric data into your BIS, and also is able to create a custom schema for your organization, which has custom metadata attributes attached to it. And so each of your pieces of bathymetric data can have custom attributes that are then used to sort, query, filter the data so that you can make further custom surfaces from your bathymetric data. So this super user will publish those data through ArcGIS Image Server as an ArcGIS image service, which will be then consumed by a configured web application, and then available to the many to explore and extract those data. Could you advance, please, Victoria? So yes, so this exploration and extraction piece is where I'm going to start out by showing you a small demo of what this looks like in the new web application that will be delivered with the solution. So if we can advance the slide, and I think we're missing the demonstration.
Yes, it looks like we're missing the demonstration. Give me 1 second and I'm going to pull it up for you, Meredith.
So during this demonstration, I'm going to basically show you a video of me using and manipulating the new Bathymetric web application to create a custom surface. That custom surface, it's basically going to be a text recipe. And that text recipe then can then be reused in the web application, and it can also be put back into the GP tools that we will have offered in the desktop version of ArcGIS Pro in order to create custom surfaces with your data and be able to extract more information and do more with it that way. So this is a video where I will basically talk over what I'm doing in the video. What we're seeing here is I am using the first of 3 widgets in this video to show you that I am looking at a table. The table is a bathymetry catalog of all my bathymetry data in my BIS. I'm also able with this web app to change the imagery background behind it. And the reason why I will do that is these data are for the ports of LA and Long Beach. And when you zoom that far in, the Esri Oceans base map, as you may know, does not display at that resolution. So I'm switching over to imagery. Now I'm using the second widget, Explore Bathymetry, to basically create a filter, an advanced query filter for my data. So what I'm doing is based on custom attribution that I've given to my bathymetric data, I'm looking for data that are in meters, positive up directionality, mean lower low water vertical data, and that were surveyed by the ports of LA Long Beach. And as you can see, as I'm making these selections, both the table widget and the display are changing to accommodate those selections. Then I am adding these data to the third widget, which is Compose Surface. And so I'm doing a gut check here to make sure that all my data that have been entered were indeed surveyed by the ports of LA Long Beach. Yes, they have. And so these are some of the data that I want to work with. Now going back to the Explore Bathymetry datasets widget and table, you can see that there are 2 tabs in that table, and I'm switching back and forth. I'm going to do a similar query here where I'm looking for data that are meters positive up, again, mean lower low water, vertical datum, but now I'm looking for data that were surveyed by US Army Corps of Engineers. And we only have 3 data sets there, you can see, but they look correct to me. These are the channels into ports of LA Long Beach that were surveyed by the Army Corps. And what I'm doing now is I'm adding those to the data in my Compose Surface dataset. So now if I go over to the Compose Surface datasets tab, what I can see is that US Army Corps have indeed been added to my ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach datasets. Now, opening the sidebar in my third widget, this is Compose Surface. So now I'm going to create a recipe for these Compose Surface data sets that's going to establish priority by making a rule set. Now, the first rule I make will always supersede other rules that go below them. So what you see here is I'm creating, my number 1 rule is survey date descending. So this is going to have my latest, my newest data on top. And after that, cell size ascending means that my data are going to be prioritized by finest to coarsest resolution. And at this point, I can save both the rules if I just want to stamp my BIS with that same rule set over and over. Or what you see me doing here is creating a model, which is the whole enchilada, if you will. So these are all the data sets that I have filtered, plus the rule sets I have imposed on them. Now I'm writing a model description. This will be in header of my text file so that for management purposes, I can remember what I did here and what the purpose of this model is. And I am opening it up in Notepad++, as you can see. So what we have here is we have the model description as I just wrote it in human readable text, followed by unique identifiers for each of the pieces of data that I filtered to, and they are presented in the order in which they were, in which the rule set had them applied. And then the names of all those data sets, and finally the rules that were applied to them. So that is something that's very easily human readable. And like I said, this can now be reused in this bathymetry web application, but it can also be a critical input into one of the GP tools in the ArcGIS Pro bathymetry toolbox. Okay, now as I had stated, I'm working backwards a little bit. So I've now showed you basically the end product. I've showed you the bathymetric web application that is deliverable through this the ArcGIS bathymetry solution. When you purchase a license for that, that is configurable in the configuration file, so you can show as much or as little as those metadata attributes as you or your organization feel comfortable with. You can also, there's a pop-up functionality. You can show depth at a point. You can show the number of rasters if you have multiple overlapping rasters at a point. You can get a pop-up that details each one of those, and all of that is configurable. So now we're going to talk about, can we advance? We're going to talk about the middle portion of this workflow, which is basically, well, what is it that we're publishing to that image service? And what it is probably many of you are familiar with this, is a mosaic data set. And this mosaic data set is basically composed of all the eligible raster data that are in your bathymetric information system. And why do we use mosaic data sets? Well, this allows us to reference data rather than duplicate it. So we're not copying and pasting data, and we're not taxing our infrastructure by doing this. We're not moving data. Instead, we are referencing them through a table to where they actually are, and on-the-fly mosaic dataset technology is creating a seamless multi-resolution data surface for your visualization. And when you have a mosaic data set that you have composed, so either you have a mosaic data set, which you saw through the web application, which is a data set of all the data in your bathymetric information system, or if, as we saw, you can sort and filter and query and create a new mosaic data set surface, that is then used in your advanced modeling and raster analytics for your own organizational or personal needs. And like I said, the mosaic data set is that source for the web surface. That's what we call the BIS BDI, or the Bathymetric Data Index, which comprises all the eligible data for the mosaic data service. That is everything from your bathymetric information system that is, again, eligible for that. So can we advance again, please?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to touch briefly on the managerial part that happens in ArcGIS Pro on the desktop. I'm not going to belabor this too much, because nobody really wants to see me run a bunch of geoprocessing tools, but I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot at 3.1 what this looks like. So we have a bathymetry toolbox with 3 sub tool sets. Could you advance? So the utilities tools might look familiar to some of you, and that's because these are legacy bathymetry geoprocessing tools, and they have actually been available for the past several releases of ArcGIS Pro, and you would have seen them in the maritime toolbox. But now they have a house in a new sub-tool set for bathymetry tools. And I'm not going to speak too much on these particular tools. These support charting workflows. But if you have any questions about these tools, you can definitely contact me and we can go through them at your convenience. So the other two data tool sets for BIS data that I mentioned are the BIS management tools. So this is where your user or super user can create a bathymetric information system. And we provide a schema template for you to do this. You run that in the tool to create your bathymetric information system. And then you can create your custom data schema on top of that, and then add your data to the bathymetric information system, whereby the mandatory data fields that the bathymetric solution needs are auto-populated when you add your data to the BIS. And then the final tool that we have at 3.1 is this BIS to Mosaic dataset. So as you can probably have guessed, this tool is what is responsible for creating the BIS BDI. So that's the Mosaic dataset that is consumed by the web application that we deliver with the solution. But then if you create one of those JSON file recipes that you saw me create a little bit earlier, that is also an optional input to this tool. And when you use that optional input to the tool, what the output is your custom Mosaic dataset surface. So if we can advance. So the desktop a display of your BIS is kind of new and different compared to what those of you would have seen if you were legacy ArcMap bathymetry users. And we're really excited because at 3.1, ArcGIS bathymetry has completely been retooled and reimagined, and its framework leverages a brand new Esri data type, and this data type is called catalog dataset. So this is not something that you would have seen before. The catalog dataset is quite akin in a way to the Mosaic dataset in that it is a tabular way to quickly reference pieces of data by pathways and give them custom attribution. So again, we're not taxing your system by copying and pasting or moving data. Instead, we are referencing data from where they are. However, this is unique to previous ArcMap bathymetry in that ArcGIS Pro bathymetry. Now in your bathymetric information system, you're not limited to raster or point data sets. You can put any type of spatial data in there. So what we're looking at here, I call it the kitchen sink view. Again, these are all data publicly available for ports of LA Long Beach. And what we see here is not just our multi-beam bathymetric survey raster data and not just the point sounding data, but we also have some side scan sonar data in there. We have some survey polygons, we have some contour lines, and we have topobathymetric LiDAR or LAS data in there. So this is a wonderful way, say, to ask questions about what data stores you have for a particular region of interest or area, what their provenance is, who's responsible for it, what the survey date is, etc., depending on how you choose to attribute your data. Can we advance, please? So we have a couple of poll questions now, which are related to data types and data views.
Can you see the results for the first poll, Meredith?
I can see the results. I also see that one of the options was dropped. There should have been both point and point cloud data, so apologies for that.
Okay.
The second poll has to do with how you feel about the new visualization capabilities of ArcGIS Pro Bathymetry.
So it's kind of like a data fusion question, right?
Basically, I'm trying to get to whether people find this new way to be able to visualize all their pieces of bathymetric related data in a certain area of region of interest, if that's useful, not useful, or whether people are ambivalent about that. Okay, thank you. We can return to the slides. I just have a few more. Okay, so this is another view of what it looks like to see bathymetry at Pro 3.1 on the desktop. As you can see, we have the catalog data set now view of the data in the catalog in the table of contents. So we can see footprints for each of those pieces of data, and we can also see each piece of data there individually. And through catalog layer options, which will be on the top menu bar, you can adjust how many pieces of data you see at one point in your display. So for instance, you can see 5 or 50 or unlimited. And of course, that's going to have a mark on its performance when you're drawing everything in the display. To the bottom center, that is basically a view of the BIS catalog table. All of that attribution gets exported through your Mosaic data set and will appear in your web application that you show through your image service. However, like I said, that web application is configurable, so you don't have to expose everything that you see here, but everything you do expose is automatically ingested by the Explore Bathymetry and Compose Surface widgets, and then can be used to sort and filter and query those data and create those recipes. To the right, what we see is basically what I was saying is also available through the web application, but the pop-ups work just as you would expect them to in an ArcGIS Pro application, which is that you can drill down through your many overlapping data sets and look at the attributes associated with each of those. Now, for those of you who have been ArcMap Bathymetry legacy users, this will be a notable difference. And this is a wonderful new advancement because now we have a flattened table structure that allows metadata entry and configuration with core or COTS GIS Pro tools. It also makes things very easily human readable and scriptable. So before in ArcMap Bathymetry, everything was locked into an object-oriented blob field, and now everything is directly exposed so that you can do more with your data on an organizational level. So we're pretty excited about this advancement. If you can advance slides. Great. And this is just a up-close view of what it looks like to have your BIS schema that has the minimum schema that the catalog data set needs to work, plus the minimum schema that BIS needs to work. And those are delivered, like I said, as a schema that you can apply to your BIS. And then if you look, I have added what I think as a hydrographer is certain things that my organization or I as a person would be interested in: vertical datum, scale, agency, survey date. So these are all custom metadata fields that I've been imposing on my BIS schema. And you can create domains from those. So that stops people from using multiple acronyms to mean the same thing, et cetera. And you can see here I've created a vertical datum, a list of possible vertical datums for my attribution column. So again, this is all done in ArcGIS Pro COTS tools, and is extremely easy. It's as easy as the add field and create domain functionalities. Can we advance, please? So I just want to recap the capabilities of the new ArcGIS Pro Bathymetry. Again, we're unlocking data from stovepipes. So we're taking data from your proprietary acquisition software and exposing them to the world of ArcGIS, where we have many geoprocessing tools and other routines that you can use with your data to create analysis and models that are significant to you and your organization. We use the store once, reuse many times mantra, both when we create the Mosaic data set that is used in your web application, but also the BIS catalog itself now leveraging the catalog data set. Again, we're not moving or duplicating data, but we're referring to the data where they're at. In ArcGIS Pro Bathymetry, we can now archive all of your spatial data together in a single management system and not just points and rasters. As I demonstrated, there's easy visualization on the fly visualization of multi-resolution surfaces. You can leverage metadata across your data catalog. So if you have a vector data and raster data that have a common metadata attribute that's meaningful for it, you can go ahead and tag them. And so when you do an advanced query, both will pop out. I showed you capabilities for doing queries and models, and those can be extended with other ArcGIS tools. And because this solution works both as a desktop solution, as an enterprise solution, you can enable traceability and archiving across your bathymetry catalog. Next slide. This is going to be a last poll question for me for me to understand where people are sourcing their data from. So where are your data stored? Okay, that's great. That's great. We have a fairly well-balanced view of where data are stored. And I would just like to finish up by talking about our plan for next generation ArcGIS bathymetry. As you can imagine, at 3.1, which is basically the debut of this next generation hybrid product, we're just getting started. And so we are releasing the workflow that I demonstrated to you, which is basically create BIS, add your data to the BIS, create your custom schema around that and publish to the image service, and then have that be consumed by the web application that we deliver, through which you can create advanced queries and create other surfaces. However, we imagine much more beyond that. 3.1 is going to be released in the very next quarter, so Q1 2023, so it's almost here. But near-term development, we're going to do enhanced support for point and point cloud data, especially including web application inclusion and support. One of the many things that we're hearing from customers is the importance and growing importance of the S102 IHO standard. So we are going to be working hard on developing support for that standard. We're also going to be tackling some more ArcMap equivalency problems. One of those is some tools that if you're a legacy user, you may know or have noticed that are not going to be available in 3.1. And those have to do with data export. And we're also going to introduce a validate BIS capability. So to help if something has strangely has corrupted your BIS and how to recover from that. And we're going to look at other web enhancements, including a profile tool and volumetric tools for ports and dredging with that web application. Mid to longer term development, we would like to eventually have this entire workflow available on the desktop, and that will include introduction of ArcGIS bathymetry ribbons in ArcGIS Pro. And so that will allow you to do the sorting and filtering, querying, and surface creation all on the desktop. We also would like to have web app feature service support. So support to have your vector data in your web application in addition to your raster data. And we are also imagining new pro geoprocessing tools and geoprocessing tool packages so that more people who only have access to the web portion can do more with it there. And then further down the line, we're looking at expanding uses of bathymetry beyond hydrography, beyond charting, to include habitat mapping, segmentation, incorporating Esri's benthic terrain modeler into this tool, and also further support for 3D, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much.
Steve.
Yes.
Hey, can you go back one slide again? So on the AI/ML, would that be using pre-trained models, or would this tie into Esri's Deep Learning Studio? Is there anything else you can say about that?
I think that it definitely can incorporate some of the pre-trained models. So especially in the hydrography field, I know that people are interested in automatic object detection for hydrography and for charting to start with, and also shoreline reconnaissance, automatic tools for things like that.
Okay,
and
thanks,
for 3D support, I'm thinking of things like building 3D mesh and supporting 3D mesh with the bathymetry catalog. So the following slide has a number of links that can be quite helpful. That top link, some of you may be familiar with, that's our Esri Maritime Development team ArcGIS Online site, and we have a lot of products, demos, examples there across the maritime suite of products. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is by the end of this month, hopefully, we're going to have an instance of the web application that I showed a demo of today up there for people to experience themselves. Then the community page is also very useful if you have questions, not only for ArcGIS Maritime developers, but for each other. And then the maritime and hydrography industry page can help expand your horizons as far as what Esri does to support the industry at large. So that's it for me, and I think that if nothing else, we can go into questions.
Cool. I'll go ahead and field a couple questions, Meredith. So I'm going through the list.
Sounds good.
And I have a question from Amilis. How much do you thin data before putting it into the BIS?
Well, that's really up to you. That's up to you. So that you could have a layer say that you are saving to your BIS, which are your golden soundings or your very significant soundings, or you can put a point cloud in there. So it is what you as a user in your organization needs, but you would not just put raw, unprocessed data in there.
Perfect, thanks. Next question. Does the new ArcGIS BIS support both S102 layers? From Mindagaus. Sorry if I messed the name up.
We are working on that, but I do not know what you mean by both S102 layers. I only know the HDF5 specification for S102.
Okay.
But you can get in touch with me and we can talk about that. I am on the IHO S102 working group.
Perfect. Next question, again from Indigos, is does it support vector data or does it all still reside in the raster? I'm not sure.
Well, that depends on what you mean by it. As I showed you on the desktop, we can support any type of spatial data, so vector data and raster data. Through the web application at this time, it is only data that is appropriate to go into a mosaic data set.
Okay, thank you. This one's from Kate. Quick question from last slide. General hydrographic data workflow. What is an Esri geotiff? Is this the only raster to use with ArcGIS bathymetry?
Definitely not. No, the Esri geotiff is basically what HYPACK has called the type of geotiff that they export that can go directly into ArcGIS. But any type of Esri supported raster data can go into the BIS.
Okay. Another question. This one's from Hans. Is it possible to use all your tools without any connection to the cloud? He's from a government organization where they're not allowed to use anything from the cloud.
Well, say what I've showed you so far, nothing is in the cloud. If you mean server, it is at this time, it's not possible to have the web application not on a server.
Okay.
But nothing I showed you today is in the cloud.
Perfect. This one is from Carrington. If you could highlight any existing active collaboration engagement with East Africa, Kenya organizations, but then it stops. I think we'll skip this one. I'm not aware.
I think that we should invite that question
Yeah.
asker to email us.
Yeah,
so
put
them an answer offline.
I don't have an asker. Oh yeah, Carrington. So Carrington, if you can just email the maritime@esri.com, maybe we can help out on that. There's just not enough room in the go-to meeting here to capture all that information. Okay. Andrew Forbes asks, you mentioned there's no tide adjustment data. Is that true?
So that's correct. So this is not a software in which you're processing hydrographic data. Your hydrographic data will have already been processed and tide corrections applied in your previous data suite. If it's HYPACK, if it's QPS, you will have done it there before bringing it in as a finalized product into ArcGIS.
Okay. Again, from Andrew Forbes, are there tools to adjust vertically the data? Because a new definition of the chart datum, we need sometimes to change the vertical adjustments.
So you can do vertical adjustments if you have a vertical adjustment, basically a separation raster to apply to what you have. So that's very much dependent on the part of the world that you're in. So for the United States, for example, most everybody relies on VDatum, which is a wonderful tool that is owned and created by NOAA. And so you can basically create a suite of separation grids that can then be applied to your data in ArcGIS to transition your data from datum to datum. But that is highly individual depending on where you are and what the data you have are.
Okay, cool. I've got 4 questions for Mindegaus, but I'm going to let him ask one, or her. I'm sorry, Mindegaus. But here's one. How do you separate soundings from side scan and LiDAR in the BIS?
That is something that you would have done and put in as individual data sets. That's not, you don't do the data separation. Like in your BIS catalog, it's basically a catalog of created data products. So, but if you want to talk about offline about use of, say, the reduced point density tool, we can talk about that at another time.
Okay, I've got another question from Kastudis. Do you plan to provide scripts to migrate ArcMap based BIS to Pro?
No, we don't. And the reason why is because the new version, the next generation ArcGIS bathymetry is so drastically different than the ArcMap version. We basically leapfrogged. And so, like I said, ArcGIS Pro bathymetry is leveraging an all new Esri data type. So there would be scripts that you could do to ease the transition, but there's not going to be an easy button to go from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's see. I know we have one more at least. We're on time. So any plans on adding the ability, this is from Ilya, any plans on adding the ability to visualize the subsoil conditions data, i.e. longitudinal profiles of geological cross sections derived from the shallow seismic data?
So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. If you're looking at support for seg-Y data, we don't have plans for that right now. If you're talking about support for things like voxels and cross sections that way, then yes, that is in our future roadmap. To be able to kind of have a cross-pollination between bathymetry and use of voxels, not only for water column and oceanographic data, but also, as you probably are aware, of subsurface data.
Okay, I think Esri has a partner called GeoCap that has an extension on top of our ArcGIS that can do that as well. Let's see.
I think we're actually at the top of the hour now.
Yeah. Okay, one more. When this one's from Kostudis, when bathymetry extension will support export to S102? When will?
Well, as you probably know, S102 is not defined right now. In fact, as part of the S102 working group, we are just working on aligning it with S100. Version 3 of S102 should align with version 5, I believe, of S100. We are still working on producing the product specification and feature catalog. So that's kind of a loaded question because the answer is S102 has not been very well defined at this point, but we are definitely working and will be working towards the HDF5 visualization capabilities of those grid arrays, which are S102.
Okay, great. Well, that I don't think we have the time to go into the rest of the questions. Thank you for asking all these questions. Some really good questions. Meredith, I think we're pretty much finished here. And Victoria, you said these would all be available later on. Maybe we can get these the video and the recording and the slides put onto the community pages after this.
Yes.
And we can notify them of where it's at.
Yes, we're going to put everything. I'll email you the slides, the video, the recording, and the links on Meredith's last page. And any questions that weren't asked today, you can ask us in Esri community, and we'll get to answering them, as well as emailing maritime@esri.com. But thank you all for attending. That was a great webinar and a great presentation, Meredith and Steve. We hope that you can join us in our next webinar. Thank you.